ever heard the statement, readers are leaders? We're going to talk about reading today. And maybe you've tried to read before, but you weren't able to stick with a routine. And there's something that you want to learn that only comes through reading, but you're just not really sure how to go about learning that specific topic. We're going to talk about the benefits of reading today and also the challenges. So stay tuned so that you can learn how to be a more effective reader. Hey, my name is Michael Thompson, and I'm a youth pastor and student. And on this channel, we discuss personal and professional development from a Christian perspective. And our topic for today is reading. We're going to talk about the benefits of reading, the challenges to reading, some misconceptions that are commonly held about reading, and then how to read even faster. So first, for the benefits of reading, one of the huge benefits of reading is that it kicks your brain into gear. When you exercise your body, it gets stronger over time. And the same way with your brain and reading. Reading is one of those things that if you do it consistently, it's like exercise for your brain. And if you don't exercise your physical body, well, you get out of shape and you can do a lot less. And it's the same way with your brain. And the society that we live in constantly throws media at us, and we're used to consuming these really short videos that actually shorten our attention span over time. And reading becomes less and less of a task that's easy to perform. So it's important for us to make a habit of reading because it does kick our brain into gear. The second benefit of reading is that it improves our memory. When you read and you learn deeper levels of a certain concept, that helps your memory all around, even especially at the more shallow levels of that concept. The third benefit of reading is that it improves your focus. Like I said, there's so many different forms of media that are constantly grabbing at our attention. But if you can learn how to grab a book and go sit down and actually focus for a certain amount of time, your focus will actually get stronger as you work on focusing. Like I said, it's like a muscle. As you practice, you'll be able to do it for longer and longer periods of time. And when it comes to reading, if you'll sit down and set a timer for 10 minutes, just start small, maybe even 5 minutes, and then make sure you sit and you focus for that 5 minutes while you're reading a certain book, then expand that to 10 minutes. And then after you do that for a while, expand to 20 minutes. That's going to improve your focus. And it's not just going to improve your focus in the area of reading, but there are so many other areas as well that will also be benefited by you practicing sitting down and focusing when it comes to reading. And like I said, it's exercising your brain. The fourth benefit of reading is that it improves your vocabulary. So you learn how to use the different vocabulary words that the author uses. And reading isn't also just valuable because of what you memorize. Reading's valuable because you learn how to think the way the author thinks. I used to, when I was first reading, I would think, oh man, if I don't remember this lesson exactly how the author said it, then I didn't really get any benefit out of the book. And that's not exactly true. If you can just learn how to think the way the author thinks on the topic that the author wrote on, that is really advantageous to you. And you'll even be able to, if you learn how to think a certain way financially because you read a financial book, you'll be able to apply that same kind of thinking to other areas. The fifth benefit is that reading improves your imagination, especially when you read genres like fiction. Most of what I read is nonfiction, but your imagination is improved both ways, but especially with the fiction category. And the sixth benefit is that reading improves your understanding. And that one's kind of obvious, but when you are reading about a certain concept, you're learning on a deeper and deeper level of whatever you're reading about, and so it improves your understanding of that specific area. So those are the benefits of reading, but what about the challenges? Are there some challenges that you've run into before when it comes to reading? Well, one of the main challenges is regression. That's whenever you read a paragraph and then you forgot where you were at. And I noticed that I did this a lot when I was in like grade school and even a little bit in later towards high school. But like I would read a paragraph and then I'd forget what I read. That was a big thing. One of the areas that you can really grow in when it comes to not forgetting what you're reading is have a goal before you start reading. So don't sit down and just see a blank page and just go at it. Don't do that. Have questions in your mind and have a goal that you're trying to accomplish. So if you're going to try to learn about a certain area in, movies, right? You can sit down, you can say, okay, I want to learn about how the director goes about leading the group as they're, shooting the film or whatever. But if you have that question in your mind before you go to the pages and the papers and reading, you're going to be able to be looking for an answer. Then whenever your brain finds that answer, it's going to remember it a lot better. You'll be able to better focus. And when you're looking for something, your brain is much more active. So like I said, if you have those questions in your brain before you start reading and you have that your brain is looking for something, you'll be able to remember everything a whole lot better. Another area that is a challenge to reading is subvocalization. This is when you're reading and you're basically talking out loud in your brain while you're reading. The reason that's a problem is it keeps your words per minute way, 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 way down. So when you first sit down to read, there's a habit of, it's like whenever you learn how to read out loud, that's what's going on in your head. And as long as you have that habit, you're going to be a much slower reader and you're going to have a hard time reading larger amounts of material faster. So you have to learn how to not in your head walk and be sounding or saying all the words out loud. You have to learn how to not do that and just read what's on the page and log the information. We've talked about benefits and challenges to reading, but what about misconceptions? One misconception is that faster readers do not comprehend well. That's not true. When you first start learning how to read faster, you don't comprehend as quickly, but it's also helpful to understand structure of writing. And the more books that you read, the more you learn how books open up with an intro, they end with a conclusion, and in each chapter, it's the same way. You know, the chapter is going to open introing a topic, probably going to be a story or a attention getter, and then the conclusion is going to summarize what's in that chapter. So you can actually hack reading by reading the if you're reading information, you know, fiction, you want to read the whole thing from start to finish because that's part of the experience. But when you're reading nonfiction, go to the conclusion first. Read the conclusion, see the outline of what's being written about. That way you can pick and choose what you want to read. And that is also going to help you read a lot faster. Another misconception of reading is that some people think that it's harder and it takes more effort to read fast. And that's not necessarily true. It is true at first, okay? It is harder and it takes more effort to read fast, but it's only at first, because once you get used to reading quickly, it becomes a habit, just like anything else, and you don't have to be constantly putting more effort towards it. The third misconception we're going to talk about is that faster readers cannot appreciate reading, and that's also not true. As you read quicker, you're actually able to appreciate more reading. You're actually able to appreciate more concepts because obviously the return on your investment is much higher because you're able to read quicker. We've talked about benefits, we've talked about challenges, misconceptions. So how do you read even faster? Well, like I said, reading is like exercising. And as you go to the gym and you push your body, you develop muscle, it's going to be able to do more over time. And it's the same way when it comes to reading. So a great way to improve your reading speed is to count the words on the page of a book you're going to practice on and average the words and then read for a minute. So basically, if you take one page, you know, count all the words on it, and then take a couple other pages, average the amount of words that's on every single page, and then practice reading for a minute and try to get further in that minute, further every single time that you read through the pages. So you read the exact same pages over and over again, but you're trying to read faster and faster. And when you're learning to read faster, you have to understand that your peripheral vision is a key factor. So you're not going to read word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4. You're going to look at the middle of a group of 3 words and then use your peripheral vision to see what's before and after those words. So you should be looking at each line 2, max 3 times instead of looking at every single word. When you learn how to do that, your eyes start bouncing on the page and you're able to read much faster. But like I said, this takes a lot of practice. And when you're learning how to read quicker, you have to know that the kind of literature you're reading definitely makes a huge difference. If you're reading a news article, you're going to be able to read that a lot faster because the chances are the words aren't that complex and you probably know most of the vocab words being used. But if you read something from 200 years ago and then there's a lot of these and the thous, and you get this a lot in theology reading, I'm not able to read that quickly because in order to understand what's being talked about, my brain has to be so active in focusing on what I'm reading. So the kind of literature that you read does make a difference in terms of how fast you'll be able to read it. So that's how you read even faster. So we've talked about the benefits, the challenges, the misconceptions, and then how to read quickly. And remember, when you're reading, you want to have a goal. So don't just start reading at a random point. Have a goal, have some questions in mind that you want answered when you start reading a certain book, right? Or a certain article. And also, if you're looking for information, that changes how you read versus reading a fiction book. Fiction book, you start beginning, go to end. If you're looking for information, start in the conclusion and look at the structure. That way you know where to start. And also, guys, remember your peripheral vision is a huge factor. So don't read word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4. Look at groups of words. That way your eyes are scanning lines 1 to 2 times. And the type of book that you're reading or the type of article, the complexity makes a difference as well when it comes to how fast you can read. Guys, thanks for watching. I've learned a decent amount in reading and I'm still on the adventure. So hope that you can learn a few things from this and get out there and read some more, work that brain, and remember it gets easier over time because you build the habit. See you guys.